Okay guys, we're back with today's lesson. This is a recording that I'm doing regarding the topic of ratios. Let me re-elaborate on where we were left behind. On the last video, there was an exercise that you guys were supposed to do by yourselves. So let's discuss those details. Before I go there, I would like to remind you guys that the idea is that you guys watch the complete video. Remember that you can pause the video at any point so you can check the procedure. If you feel like you don't understand something, you can always go back and rewatch the video. Now, don't skip sections of the video. The idea is that you watch the complete video in its corresponding sequence, okay? Now, remember that the exercises are also included on the video, so if you want to pause the video, do the exercise by yourselves and then watch my solution. That is a very nice way to practice. Now remember that some of you guys might be working at different paces, so be mindful about the time and space needed by others to complete the tasks. And also please ask questions. There might be other people around you with the solution to your question, so please be sure to use what other people know in your favor. Or if you want to share the solution of one of the exercises, please do so. And finally, please remember that you have to take a picture of your work on your notebook. You need to upload that evidence on Google Classroom. Your notes might not be the same as other people, but the important thing is to prove that you guys were working on the solution of the exercise itself. Okay, let's begin. Now, let me review what we did before. On video 1 and 2, we talked about the definition of a ratio. We were talking about making a distribution of quantities or comparing two amounts in which one is contained on the other. That's normally the way we talk about ratios. Now, previously I did mention, be careful because sometimes we talk about only two amounts, but there are exercises like the one that I left as a homework on video number 2 in which we have 3 quantities involved. Okay, so there could be more than 2. Now, second important information, if you're going to compare amounts, you need to be sure that the amount is using the same unit. So for example, on the very first exercise we worked together, we were comparing either minutes or hours, but there was a complete mistake by Eva when she was making a comparison, and both units were different. We even worked with the exercise on percentages. We even talked about piles of books. And what I mentioned at that point is that you can write down one ratio, or you can always, let's talk about this one being the original one, A, but you can make a division by 5 and go down to B, or even go to the simplest term in C. The good thing about simplifying ratios is that the simplest form of them allows you to understand what's happening. For example, if I read ratio C, what I can see there is that the one in the middle, 2, is half of the first one, 4. And then the last one is half of the one in the middle. Or if we want to compare the last one with the first one, then the first one is 4 times the last one. So there's a very easy way to compare them, and that helps a lot in terms of knowing what is the comparison between amounts. Okay, so highly recommend, whenever you're working with ratios, always simplify the most you can so you can understand better the comparison. For example, in those 5 exercises that we worked together last video, the instruction itself is quite clear, right? You have to write it down on the simplest form. So one thing is to simplify all the way to the end, and the other thing is that remember that all 5 exercises were combining different units. So we were forcing you guys to change the unit. So you have to choose. For example, in the first one, you either work with kilograms or you work with grams, but you have to choose one. You cannot work with a combination of 2. Okay, and on the last video, I even shared with you guys the answers. Here's number 1, number 2, milliliters and liters, number 3, pennies and pounds, number 4. This was homework. I checked this on the last video. I decided to do the solution by using minutes. And the last one, this was very interesting because we were combining 3, millimeters, centimeters, and meters, and I decided to work on centimeters. Okay, and then finally, I provided a summary with all the answers. Take a look that all of the expressions are written down in the simplest form, so all of them. So if you are able to find the simplest form of them, then you can see from there that you can, in this case, you can interpret the answer correctly. For example, on the first one, what I said on the last video, that one amount is 8 times bigger than the other. And that type of comparison is always important. Especially when you have the simplest form, it's easier to compare. And after that, we started solving problems. So the first problem we solved was the one with the beads. So we had 32 beads and the division was 7 parts against 1. So 7 parts of pink, that was 28 beads, and 1 part of blue, that will be 4. So 28 plus 4 will be 32. So we were just finding out the amount of beads per color. The next one was about the angles on a triangle. So the angles were on the ratio 2, 5, 2, and we realized that each part had a size of 20 degrees. So one angle was 40, the other angle was 100, and the other one was 40. And we checked that 40 plus 100 plus 40 is 180, and that if the triangle has 2 angles with the same size, we call that triangle an isosceles triangle. This was also one that was solved previously on video number 2. And then finally we discussed the case of Rosie, Mo, and Teddy. So we were even using in this case, like a bar graph, a bar diagram, to discuss the amount of money. We got to the solution in which Mo and Teddy had 72 pounds. So let's write it down again here. So 72 pounds was the amount between Mo and Teddy. And we got that solution because we realized that if Teddy has 40, then Mo has 32. And those two together equal 72. And what I said on our previous class was, if you know that Mo and Teddy have 72 pounds and that represents 80% of the money, I was asking you guys, well, can you tell me how much money will Rosie have, right? So that was an exercise that I left for you guys. I hope you were able to solve that. And the solution is as follows. Let me show you guys the way. So 72 pounds is 80%. So what you can do is you can divide 72 pounds, you can divide that into 4. So if you divide 72 by 4, what you're going to find is that 18 pounds, this is 20%. Let me repeat. 80% is 72 pounds. So if I divide 72 in 4 parts, what I find is 20%, meaning that 18 pounds is the amount that Rosie, 18 pounds is the amount of money that Rosie has. So Rosie at the end had 18 pounds in her hands, okay? And that's it. That was the exercise that we finished last video. Again, I was focusing only on Mo and Teddy, but I told you guys at the end of the last video, try by yourselves to find the amount of money that Rosie has, and in this case Rosie has 18 pounds, okay? So that means that in total, all 3 of them together, they have 90 pounds in total. So let's write it down over here. So when we think about all of them together, Rosie, Mo, and Teddy, they were sharing 90 pounds all together. Okay. And then finally, the exercise, the one that I told you guys that was on you to find the solution. We were talking about a total amount of books. So we know that the ratio is 3 for fiction, 7 for history, and then 5 for biography. In total, we have 15 parts. That's the total amount of parts, 3 to 7 to 5. And we know that we have 195 books. So if we divide 195 books in 15 equal parts, then the answer is 13 per part. 13 books per part. Okay, so that means that if the first section, in this case fiction, has 3 parts, that'll be 3 times 13. If the second section has history, 7 parts, then 7 times 13. And the last section, if we know that biography has 5 parts, then 13 times 5. So what we can do is that we take, let me change the color here. We know that we have 3, 7, and 5. And what we're going to do is that we're going to multiply this by 13 to find the amount of books per section. So for example, 3 times 13, that is 39 books. So that will be 39 books for fiction. Let's write down the first one. The next one, 7 times 13. So 7 times 13, that will be, let's see, 21 plus 70, this is 91. And then finally 5 times 13, 65. So what we're going to say here is that 39 is fiction, F for fiction, 91 is history, H, and 65 is biography. Okay, so that is the proportion of books, 39 to 91 to 65. Once again, the first ratio is the simplest form of the ratio. Once we multiply by 13 books, remember that each section has 13 books, then we find the total amount of books per type. So fiction 39, history 91, and then biography 65. This is the type of exercises we're expecting you guys to solve by yourselves, and take a look that this is an exercise in which the ratio involves 3 values. So normally we talk about 2 amounts, but there is a possibility, of course, that you can solve exercises regarding 3 amounts, and that's not a problem at all. Okay, let's continue with the next. Now, this is an interesting exercise. Take a look. We have now three people here, Rosie, Tommy, and Alex. Now, it looks like the exercise is the same. Take a look that they all have the same ratio, 6, 5, and 4. And the amount of money is for all the same, is 90 pounds. The only difference is the focus of the exercise. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to solve the exercise in 3 parts. We're going to do exercise A, B, and C individually. And we're going to discuss all the different things about them, okay? Be careful, because even though the first sentence is the same for all of them, the important thing is the question, the information that is provided afterwards, okay? Remember that in all of them we have Rosie, Tommy, and Alex, and for all of them the ratio is 6, 5, 4, and we know that the problem is involving 90 pounds. The problem here is, what is the difference between them? Because the way in which we're going to distribute the money is completely, it's not the same between sections. So A, B, and C will have all different answers. Let's throw ourselves to the first one. At the end, what I'm expecting is that you guys are able to compare the 3 problems. And maybe the most important thing about this is that you have to be very careful when you work with the ratios to focus on the information provided. because sometimes you throw yourselves to solve an exercise without checking what was the question or where is the information available. So for this particular case, even though they share general information that is very similar, the question itself is different. So once you come into solving the exercise, you have to be very, very mindful about those differences. So let's move to exercise number 1. So let's see. It says Rosie, Tommy, and Alex, they're sharing 90 pounds in the ratio 6:5:4. And how much money does Rosie get more than Alex? Take a look that whenever we read a ratio, we're going to assume that 6:5:4 is the same order provided for their name. So 6 parts for Rosie, Tommy has 5 parts, and then Alex has 4 parts. So what we're saying here is that the total amount of money is 90, but we have to make the distribution in the following way. Rosie gets 6 parts, Tommy gets 5 parts, and then Alex gets 4 parts. So before even you start, you have to take note that if this is the ratio 6:5:4, then between all of them, what we have is 15 parts. 6 plus 5 plus 4 is 15 parts, and we are making a division of 90 pounds between those 15. Okay, this is important because the problem itself is talking about sharing. So they all share the same amount. So it is important for you guys to take note of that. So if that's the case, then 90 pounds divided in total 50 parts, then each part has a value of 6 pounds. So I'm going to show a diagram that describes what's happening here, but for now, the most important thing is how we use the information. So let me use that information in my favor. Number 1, all the 90 pounds must be shared by all of them. That is condition number 1. And condition number 2 is how the distribution is done. So Rosie will get more. She has 6 parts. Tommy is the second one with 5 parts, and then Alex has 4 parts. So we know from the beginning that Rosie should be getting more money than Alex for sure. How do I know this? Well, because Rosie should get 6 parts and Alex is getting only 4 parts. And for now, what we know is that each part has a value of 6 pounds. So let's see with the diagram the composition of the distribution of money between Rosie, Tommy, and Alex. So let's move to the next slide. Of course, if you guys can find the answer without the diagram, it's perfectly fine, but take a look how nice is this. We already know that every part has a value of 6 pounds. Rosie has 6 parts. So that means that she has 6 times, so that is 36 pounds. Now let me use red. We move into Tommy. Tommy has 5 parts. So Tommy has 5 of those 6 parts, so Tommy received 30 pounds. And then finally, we have Alex. Alex is receiving only 4 of those parts, so 4 times 6, and that's 24 pounds. Meaning then that we have 36, 30, and 24. The one with the biggest amount of money is Rosie. The one with the least amount of money is Alex. And between them, there is a difference. So this is what we're trying to find. How much money is the difference between Alex and Rosie? And you can see that the difference between them is 2 parts. So that means that Rosie has these 2 extra pieces that Alex doesn't have. So what we can say is that Rosie has 12 more pounds than Alex. And that's it. How much more money does Rosie get than Alex? Well, she's receiving 12 more pounds. And that's how we're going to solve this exercise. So for this first part, we're going to call this exercise A. What we're doing is that we're sharing the complete 90 pounds between them all. Let's check exercise 2 to see what is the difference. Here you can see the answer. Rosie gets 12 more than Alex. Let's see the next one. Okay, so what we have here is, again, we're sharing in the same ratio. Rosie, Tommy, and Alex. Now, the difference is that Rosie is the one getting 90 pounds. We're not sharing 90 between them all. Rosie, and only Rosie, is the one receiving 90. So in this exercise, we have to focus on Rosie only. So Rosie is receiving 90 pounds. That is the total amount that Rosie is receiving. And remember that Rosie has 6 parts. So from this, what we can say is Rosie is receiving 90 pounds. And those 90 pounds represent 6 of the parts. That means that every single part has a value of 15 pounds. Let me repeat. Rosie is the one getting 90 pounds. She represents 6 parts out of the total, meaning that Rosie has a composition of 15 6 times. That's only Rosie. From Rosie, then we can start moving to the other people, because if we know that each part from Rosie has a value of 15, then that means that for Tommy and Alex, that's the same thing. So let's move to the diagram. Let me show you guys what we have. So you can see here on the diagram that for Rosie, we know that each part is 15. If you add 15 6 times, that gives us the total 90 that she received. But that is also true for the rest. So for Tommy, he has only 5 parts, but each one of those parts is 15. So if we're interested in finding how much money does Tommy get, well, the only thing we have to do is to multiply 15 times 5. And that gives us 75 pounds. So in this exercise, the focus is not on Tommy or Alex. The focus is on Rosie. We know the amount of money Rosie is getting, and from there, we can find Tommy's money. And this is not part of the exercise, but if you guys want, you can see here that Alex receives 4 parts. So that's 15 times 4, and that gives us 60 pounds. So you can also find the amount of money provided to Alex. So once again, it's the same information, but the distribution is different, because in this case, the person who is receiving money is Rosie, and from Rosie, or the 90 pounds was the complete amount for Rosie. So then from Rosie, we can find the amount that Tommy and Alex are receiving. Okay? Once again, the ratio is the same, 6, 5, and 4. So we multiply 15 for each one of those parts. Okay. And then finally, number 3. So let's see, this was exercise B. On the next slide, you can see the answer. You can see here how Tommy is getting 75 pounds. This was the answer that I discussed before. And then finally, exercise C. So for exercise C, again, the ratio is the same. We have Rosie with 6, Tommy with 5, Alex with 4. And now the question is a little bit different, because what they're saying is that Rosie gets 90 more than Alex. Okay, so let me repeat. Rosie gets 90 pounds more than Alex, meaning that now the fight is between Rosie. This is Rosie versus Alex. So let me make a drawing here. So Rosie has 6 parts. Okay, this is the description by Rosie, and Alex, poor Alex, only has 4 parts. And what we know from this diagram is that there is a difference between them, right? So you can see from here that Rosie is receiving more money. And the information we know is that this amount, the amount that Rosie gets more than the rest, is 90 pounds. Okay? So let me repeat. Rosie has 6 parts, Alex only has 4. And we know that Rosie gets 90 more than Alex, meaning that Rosie has 45 pounds on each one of those extra steps. Let me repeat. Once again, Rosie is receiving more money than Alex. She receives 90 more than him, and we know that those 2 extra spaces that she has, or extra parts, each one of them represent 45. That means that for Rosie, the complete composition is 45 each. And for Alex, remember that he has the same amount, but only 4 parts. Okay, this is the case of Rosie against Alex. Now we know their total amounts. Remember that it's 45 each part, but the exercise is focused on Tommy. And don't forget that Tommy has 5 of those parts. So if Rosie has 6 parts and each one of them with a value of 45, and Alex has 4 parts, each one of them with a value of 45, then for Tommy, we can say something similar. We know that each one of his sections has a value of 45 pounds, and he has 5 of them. Okay, so if we do that multiplication, then we know that Tommy is receiving 225 pounds. Okay, and that's it. So take a look at how exercise A, B, and C are completely different between them in terms of how the money was distributed. If you guys would like to show this as a diagram, take a look how we have here the information. Rosie has 6 parts, Tommy has 5 parts, and then Alex has 4 parts. It doesn't matter the amount of parts, they all share that each individual part has a value of 45. Of course, Rosie has more parts, but each part has the same size. And when we think about the answer at the end, take a look that Tommy gets 225 pounds. So when we think about Tommy, as I said before, this is 45 pounds times 5. And that's the answer. Okay guys, this is enough for today. I've left you guys a few exercises on my iMaths that you have to finish, and remember, you have to upload the evidence of your work on this video. So the notes on your notebook, take a picture and upload that on the assignment. See you guys next class. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.